Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome you all to the Communication Theories 1 course. This course has a course code of GMC 311. This is lecture number 8, and in the part 1 we are going to discuss linear model of communication, which is one of the basic communication models. I'm Anwar Khan, lecturer journalism and mass communication department, Cohort University of Science and Technology. Let's first of all have a look at the discussion points that what we will be discussing in our today's presentation. So, first of all, we will present an overview of the previous topics. The topics which we have already studied in the department when the university was open and classes were regular. So, we will present an overview of those previous topics so that our students can remember the topics which we have already studied and can make a possible link with the current topic. Then we will present the features of a linear model of communication. Then we will study the industrial revolution, that why industrial revolution is linked or associated with a linear model of communication. What are the possible reasons for it? So we will explore those reasons. Then we will look at the elements of a linear model of communication, and then finally we will look at the demerits or weaknesses of linear model of communication. So these are actually the core questions or the core points that we will be discussing in our today's presentation, and I hope that our students will be able to understand all these questions after listening and attending the today's presentation. So these are our discussion points as well as our learning outcomes. So let's begin with the previous topics that we have discussed in the department. So when the new semester or the spring semester started, so we discussed the definitions of the theory. We wanted to know what is a scientific theory, what is the meaning of the scientific theory. So for that purpose, we studied various definitions of theory given by communication scholars, as well as definitions given by famous dictionaries, so that our students can have a comprehensive idea about the communication. Because if our students are pursuing their higher studies in MS or PhD, so the same term theory they will face over there. So it is necessary for them to understand the term theory over here. And secondly, also that if they understand the term theory or the scientific theory, the coming topics in the course, it will be easy for them to understand. So that was the reason that we dedicated 2 days to the definitions of the theory. Then we studied the possible and various qualities of scientific theory, and we discussed them comprehensively in the class. Then we spoke about theory in everyday life, that do we have theory or we use theory in our daily everyday life, and if yes, then in what forms and in what formats we use theory in our everyday life. And thirdly, we also studied that how everyday life theory can be differentiated from the scientific theory. So all these three questions were addressed in the class, and then we came to know about theory, the model, and the paradigm, that what are the possible differences between all these three terms. We also came to know about the importance of each of the term, right? So this was also discussed in the class. And lastly, but not the least, Laswell's model of communication, it was also discussed in the class. So all these 5 topics, they were discussed comprehensively in the department. Okay, so let's discuss the various features of a linear model of communication. Feature number 1 is that this model is also called transmission model of communication. So linear model of communication or a transmission model of communication means the same thing, and we should not be confused in it. Secondly, we say that it is the oldest of the communication model, and it is quite true, because if we'll study the history of a linear model of communication, then we will come to know that this linear model of communication has its root in the old times of the Greece, where Aristotle and Socrates, they worked a lot on the communication, different aspects of the communication, and they knew that communication is very important because it could be used for the manipulation of the public, for the public perception building, and for other purposes. That was the reason that they worked a lot on the communication. And we know that Aristotle has given a communication model, right? Aristotle, which is called Aristotle's model of communication, that we will be studying in our this course. And then we know that separate courses, special courses were introduced in the old times of Greece with the title of public speaking. And this public speaking was necessary for the leaders, as far as I have studied the history. And it was necessary for the leaders to have good communication skills so that they could speak effectively at the public gathering. And that was I mean, at that time public speaking was a main topic at the times of the old Greece. And we know that Aristotle, who has worked on different aspects of communication, he has also worked on the effective communication, that how to communicate effectively. And for that purpose, he has worked on the rhetorics. And then we know that he has given three building blocks of the effective communication, that if a speaker wants to have a good communication or impressive communication, so what could be the building blocks? So for him, ethos, pathos, and logos, these are actually the building blocks of the effective communication. So to cut it short, it this linear model of communication, it is the oldest of the communication model, right? So then feature number third is that this linear model of communication is unidirectional. Unidirectional means that it moves from the sender to the receiver, right? And the receiver is in no position to send the message back to the sender, or the receiver is not in a position to give the feedback. It is only and only the sender who will send the message to the receiver. And that is the reason that this model is called linear model, because it moves in a straight line. Fine. And then feature number four is that this model actually emphasizes the sender and the message, and gives secondary importance to the receiver. Fine. And the reason is that that we speak that this model emphasizes sender and message, because this model is associated with the manipulation, or is best suited with the propaganda, right? This model, when we speak about it, and we will elaborate it more in detail in the coming slides. So this model is well suited with the propaganda, and where the sender wants to send a specific message with hidden objectives to the receivers. And this model actually considers audience as passive audience. Feature number four, according to this model, communication has a direct, immediate, and uniform effect on the audience. So these are actually the features where this model was criticized, that the communication cannot have immediate effect on all the audiences. Similarly, it cannot have uniform effect on all the audiences, because it may have effect on some members of a group, immediate effect and uniform effect on some members of the group. But to say like this, that it has immediate effect and uniform effect on all the members of the same group, it is wrong. And that was the reason that it was criticized. And then this direct effect, it was also criticized, that sometimes the media or the communication may not have a direct effect, it will have indirect effect, where the opinion leaders, they will come and play their role. Then the final feature, we say that it is nowadays we consider it very simple, this linear model of communication, and underdeveloped. It is quite true, but it has also laid the foundation for the scholars to study different aspects of the communication. And that is the reason that now we have interactive model of communication, we have transactional model of communication, that we will be studying in the part 2 of the series. And yeah, it was this linear model of communication was understood as simple and underdeveloped, but it laid the foundation. This is quite true, that it laid the foundation for future studies. Let's discuss industrial revolution, that what do we mean by it, and how it is linked with a linear model of communication. So as the term is self-explanatory, that industrial revolution actually was a revolution of industries across the globe. And this industrial revolution, first of all, occurred in the United Kingdom, then in the United States, then in other countries of the world, and it happened in different phases, like first industrial revolution, second industrial revolution, third industrial revolution, fourth industrial revolution, and it continues and will continue in the future, because it is in the human nature to work for the betterment of the human beings. So it is very we can say that, to cut it short, we can say that it is a very very broad concept, and which is a combination of numerous other concepts, right? So and this industrial revolution can be explained from different perspectives, from multiple perspectives. But we are not going to do it, because we are not concerned with that. We are only concerned with the communication perspective or the media perspective, that how industrial revolution developed the communication or media industry at that time. So if we study the printing press, which was invented in 1450s by Johann Gutenberg in Mainz of Germany, so we can say that it actually revolutionized the human life, the human mind, because it is actually the printing press that we have numerous literature, we have knowledge about everything, because we have books to read. It is just possible because of the printing press. And this printing press was actually, the invention of the printing press was called the invention of the millennium. And truly it is, because if we know about the past heroes or the past literature of or different movements of the medieval times, so it is just because of the printing press. Fine. The invention of the telegraph, the penny press, yellow journalism, movies, radio, television, actually industrial revolution basically revolutionized each of the stream. If we speak it from the perspective of the print media or the electronic media or the online media, which has developed right now, a few decades ago. So it has revolutionized it. If you talk about the movies, so it has revolutionized the human life, right? And this industrial revolution has revolutionized each of the stream, right? So for example, from the perspective of the movie, if you discuss it, so it has revolutionized in the form of the modern cameras, right? Lenses, if you speak about modern lenses and advanced type of lenses were introduced, so that to capture or to have better qualities and wide angles to give it to the audience, right? Similarly, the radio, the size of the radio was reduced, the television, the invention of the television. I mean, all these things are basically linked with the industrial revolution. So and at that time the people were taking this media as an active agent of change, and the audience were thinking of themselves as a passive audience, because they were thinking that they could not resist the media, because media is very powerful. So the credit goes to industrial revolution, that it also revolutionized the communication or media industries, and that is the reason that industrial revolution is linked with the linear model of communication. So, what are the various elements of linear model of communication? So, the first we have is the sender. Sender is the subject who designs the message. So, we can say that the designer of the message is called the sender, or we can say that the initiator of the communication process is called the sender. And we have to keep in mind that this sender can be in the form of a person, organization, or anything else. For example, right now I am recording a lecture, so I am a sender, and students, they are the receiver. And it can be in the form of an organization, like newspaper organization, magazine organization. It can be in the form of television station, radio station, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. All of them, they come in the category of the organization, because they give us information, and they would be called sender. And it can be in anything. I mean, it can be anything, like it can be an advertisement, it can be in the form of a banner, it can be in the form of a board uh, fixed on the motorway, telling you how much the limit of your speed should be, right? So this sender can be in any of the forms, and because it is a very broad term, it is not a very narrow term that we would think a sender in terms of a person. No, it would be wrong, absolutely wrong. This sender can be a person, organization, or anything else. Then we have the message. Message is the information or the data which the sender wants to share with the receiver. I think and I hope that it would be easy for you. The sender has something in mind and wants to share that information or data with the receiver. Fine. So he communicates or sends that information to the receiver. That information or data is called message. Then we have the channel. Channel is the media through which message is sent. Without the media, we may not be able to communicate with each other because it is through media that we can communicate. I mean, for a long distance. For example, if I want to speak or communicate with my brother who is abroad in Australia, so if I want to speak to him, so surely I would need modern technologies. Without the modern technologies, I may not be able to communicate with him. Fine. So it is necessary. Media is very much necessary in this regard. Then we can say that this media can be in the form of print media, electronic media, or online media. These are the media that we see in our everyday life. We use them, we watch them, we read them. I mean, we read stories in the print media, we watch movies or documentaries on the electronic media. Similarly, we use online media. So this is the media which we use in our everyday life. But keep in mind that this is not the only media. Air is also a media. Fine. Uh, Surely you would be confused at how air can be a media. So I can give you a very simple example that if I'm speaking with my friend who is standing near to me, so at that time, I mean the communication is possible because of the air, because air is taking the sound waves from the sender to the receiver. So air is also media. So this channel can be in the form of print, electronic, online, or air, or it can be in any of the form. Then receiver is the person or organization or anything for whom the message is designed and sent. I hope that it is very simple. This lecture I'm recording is for the students, so students are the receiver over here. Then finally we have the effects. So effects are the desired objectives which the sender has intended to achieve. So this is the last component or element of the linear model of communication. And we also discussed it that a linear model of communication this talks about the effects, talks about the objectives. Fine. So it speaks about it that how the effects or the objectives can be achieved, right? So these are the various elements of a linear model of communication, and they are very important, believe me. They are not so simple that we are just studying it that this is the sender and message and channel. I can give you the example of the Julian Assange, the founder of the WikiLeaks, who leaked controversial and confidential information, due to which he is facing numerous charges, right? So what did he do? He is the sender who just leaked information, or who gave messages to the media, and those messages, right, or those information are very critical or confidential information. Fine. So they are, I mean, not very simple terms the way we are thinking about it. Think about the sender, message, channel, or receiver, or effects in terms of the intelligence activities, right? So then you would come to know that really these elements are very, very important. Examples of linear model of communications are Aristotle's model of communication, Laswell's model of communication, Shannon-Weaver model of communication, and Burroughs model, SMCR models of communication. So these are actually the examples of linear model of communication from the angle of communication, right? These are the examples from everyday life. If anyone wants to give an example of the linear model of communication, then we can say that a linear model of communication is used in the mass communication. So we need to understand that mass communication is a very developed, is a very complex phenomenon, I mean, we are not here to discuss the simple things of of the mass communication, that what are the definitions of the mass communication, but we can discuss that how different ideas are promulgated and are spread and disseminated through mass communication. How television is used for cultivating different cultural identities, how documentaries are used, how movies are used, how newspaper is used to cultivate or to create the identity of a country as an enemy, to cultivate the identity of a country as a friend, right? So these are actually the things that are important to be discussed in mass communication. I mean, it shouldn't be discussing the definitions of the mass communication. No, it should not be. So we can see the linear model of communication, because we came to know that linear model of communication is for the specific purposes of the sender, right? And we have historical examples of it when it was used. I mean, I am talking about the mass communication that it was used by the US in World War One, in World War Two. It was used by the Great Britain. It was used by the Russia for cultivating their enemy, right? And for making certain perceptions of the people. So it is very interesting, and we can see, I mean, we can research on it. A bulk of research is available on different aspects of this mass communication, that how different identities, how us versus them are created, how Muslims are created and presented as enemies through movies, documentaries, etc. I mean, it is a very wide and broad field. So here are some of the weaknesses or demerits of the linear model of communication. The first one is that there is no concept of the feedback. Fine. This linear model of communication does not consider feedback in their communication process, because it says that the communication flows from the sender to the receiver, and there is no communication from the receiver to the sender, because this model of communication considers audience as passive audience, right? So this is one of the demerit of the linear model of communication. The second one is that there is no concept of noise, right? And the modern research has proven that there is a noise. And I mean, when we are talking with someone on right, face-to-face communication or on the modern technologies, so there is noise which affects communication, and this concept of noise is not there in the linear model of communication. So it is another demerit of this model. The third one is that this model assumes that communication has a particular beginning and an end, so it is not continuous. What does it mean? It means that this model considers that communication is not a continuous process. Communication is not a circular process. According to this model, communication is, has a certain beginning and an end, right? And the modern research has proven that this is wrong, because communication is nowadays is a continuous process and is a circular process. So this is demerit number third. And the fourth one is that the sender must have the ability to encode and the receiver must have the ability to decode. Okay, what does it mean? It means that the sender will have the ability to encode messages, right? To make messages, and the receiver must have the ability to decode it. Well, it is not always possible, because numerous, I mean, things are involved in it. The sender may have the financial abilities, right? Capacities, similarly technical facilities the sender will have, while on part of the receiver they may not have it. They may not have the technical facilities or the financial resources. So it is another demerit or the weakness of the linear model of communication. So these are the four demerits of the linear model of communication. Then we have the resources. YouTube channel is given, a video is there. So if our students want to watch that video, so that would mature their understanding about their linear model of communication. So if they want to watch it, so here is the link given. And similarly, the book Mass Communication Theory, Foundations, Ferment and Future, 7th edition. It is also a very important book for the communication scholars, for the communication students. It is freely available in the form of the PDF on the in the online. So students must download it and must read it out. They will have more information about the linear model of communication. So thank you very much. So let me revise the components or the elements which we studied. So first of all, we give an overview of the previous topics which we had already discussed in the department. Then we came to know about the features of the linear model of communication. Then we studied about the industrial revolutions. Then we studied about the elements of the linear model of communication, and then we came to know about the weaknesses or demerits of the linear model of communication. I hope that it would be easy for you to understand. If there is any question, please comment in the comment box. I will be there to answer it. See you in the next lecture. Till that, stay home, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.